Okay, so you guys are going to help me out with this, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing, right? You guys are the experts now. So let's go to Android Studio and let's start from scratch. So I'll start a new project and I'll call this in class simple calculator. Okay. And obviously you want to have Kotlin support. I don't care about C++ support. So hit next. And it's for its phone. And I'll have an empty activity. And I'll just leave the default names and I'll hit finish. Okay. Can you guys who came late remind me to take your attendance before you leave? So for all its drawbacks with Android Studio and the emulator and all that, there are some cool things that we don't have in iOS. Like if you want to do anything that deals with the hardware components like camera, you can't do that without an actual device. With the Android emulator, like if you do the intense tutorial, it uses the camera and you can do it in the emulator. So it like has a simulation where it like draws some stuff on the screen and you can take a picture of it with the emulator and use that as if you were using the camera on a real device. So that's pretty cool. Like it saves you from having to have a device. Oh, and the other thing before I forget is JetBrains, which is the company that made Kotlin and made Android Studio, they had like their first conference ever, all about Kotlin. It was called Kotlin Conf, and all the videos are released. So either there's a link in the lecture notes, or I'll put a link there. But so you might want to browse through that. Some of it's pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so here I have my brand new app, and it's going to become my calculator app, right? So first of all, I'm just going to jump into the layout and start building that. And again, it's a really simple calculator. I'm just going to take two numbers and add them or subtract them or multiply or something, right? And you guys who are using, if you're using the computer, let me know at end of class like how it is, because they upgraded the memory. That was the issue they said with them. So they want to know, is it working faster or better? So, because the minimum memory requirement for Android Studio is 8 megabytes or 8 gigabytes, and these machines had only 6. So they were saying that's what the problem was, why they were slowing down and hanging. Okay, well, I mean, just go through and build this with me and see how it works.
We need to call it, name this first.
What's that?
We need to name it our calculator or whatever.
Yeah, you can use the defaults. Just make a new project, or you can use the one you have already, existing one you have already.
I can't find the one I did today, so just
Okay.
Just leave the main activity, or just give it.
Yeah, just you leave it whatever. Okay. So by default, with an empty activity, it just has like a label, "Hello World." I'm not going to run through running that. You guys have seen that before. But I'm just going to change the text in here, and I should localize this. But for the sake of time and keeping the demo simple, I'm just going to go ahead and put the text here. But for the work you do to hand in or for like production work, make sure you localize your stuff. Don't just type in the strings here. And the other thing I'll do today's class is like I'll put the functions, like I'll have the buttons actually call a function, like it'll be in there. But there's another way to do that. If you do the intense tutorial, or I'll show you another way to quote unquote cheat. Like if you look at someone, the best way to learn how to code is like to look at other people's code and tear it apart and see how does this work. So last time I talked about Git and GitHub. So I'll actually pull down a working calculator app so you can see there's a whole bunch of them on GitHub. You can pull it apart, see how it works, and see what other people are doing. But one of the approaches is instead of having, like, when you click on a button and it calls a function, and you click on this button, it calls another function. That gets cumbersome when you have like 10 different buttons, plus, minus, times, and all that. So you can have a listener in your Kotlin code that says, hey, listen for these events, and when it happens, respond to it. So your UI can be like oblivious to logic. And in general, you want to keep your application logic outside of the layout. You don't want to tie that to your layout. That's not a good practice. But I'm going to do it here just, again, to be quick and to keep it simple. Okay, so I'll have a label here like type in two numbers and submit. So here's my label. Let me zoom in a little more. And then I'll need a button so that when they enter their numbers, they can click a button to do something with those numbers, right? So here's my button. And I'll say like press to add. Okay, so now I've got a button and a label. Now I need some way to enter those two numbers, right? So what control is that? You guys remember? How do I enter text? Yeah, edit text. So let's find the edit text. That would be here. And actually, is there a search thing on here so I can just find the edit text? It was called something else, right? It wasn't called edit text in this. Let's find out. No, text view is the same as what this thing is, but anyway, we can.
What's plain text then?
Let's try that. Oh, there we go. Plain text is what it is.
Are you at the internet?
I'm in the activity main XML. I'm in the layout file. So I created a new Android project, right? Okay. I mean, and I'm recording this too, so you can follow that. So I'll say this is like first. Actually, let me just type in 1 here and make this smaller. So I'll give it like a default. And then let's add another label. And this will say plus, just to give them a hint of what's going on. And then another one of these guys. So I just copy pasted it, Control V and Control C and Control V. So the user can change these numbers. They can type whatever they want in here. And then I'm going to click this button to add them. Okay?
How does it know to add?
What's that?
How will it know to add?
I have to write some code. So right now it doesn't do anything. Okay? And the layout's also probably all screwed up. So how can I tell Android Studio just keep the layout the way it looks on screen right now? You guys know how to do that?
No, that's actually one of the questions.
So okay, remember this thing? I can clear all the constraints with this button, and then I can hit this button to like magically apply constraints according to like what I have here.
According to how it looks already.
Yeah, but that looks really weird because I lost my 1 or something.
Is that going to be responsive? Is it going to like change depending on the screen size?
I don't know. It's a good question. Let's find out. Let's see what this looks like right now because I don't even know where my 1 went. I can see it here. It looks like it got squished. And Android's giving me errors too. Great. Okay, let me, while that's loading on the emulator, let me try and fix this label. There you go. There are all the constraints. Said clear all the constraints. Okay, let's go ahead and apply some constraints manually if we can, and so I'm just like clicking on this like circle on the top and applying constraints to each of these things. So I'm saying, okay, this should be like this much from the top, and then this one should be so much from the left, and then this guy should be so much from the guy to his left, and also to the guy to his right, and also to the guy to his above him, and also to the button below him. And then this guy, I'm going to say I want to constrain to the left side and to the right side and to the bottom. Okay, so it looks weird. I think I forgot to constrain this to the right. Anyway, I'll stick with that for now. And oh, yeah, okay, so there's my UI. Okay, and because the constraints were messed up, I don't see my one anywhere because it was smushed. So let me stop this and run it again. Yeah, it's called okay. In this view, it's called plain text. If we look at the code view, the XML, it's called edit text. Edit text makes sense. Plain text doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what they call it. And where am I? Oh, and then you can see, like, if I look at the code view, the constraints I applied are listed here now. So there's a constraint to the bottom of its parent, to the end of its parent, start of parent, and so on. So that's what the constraints look like. And you could type that in code if you wanted to, but I don't feel like doing that. Okay, so I have no code that does anything with any of these, with this button or these text fields yet, right? But I can change this to whatever. And because it's a plain text, I could type some other text in here too. Okay, so you can write code that, first of all, you can limit that to only being text, or you could put a bunch of buttons on there that have numbers on them, like a real calculator would. Okay, but for now, I'm just going to let you enter the text, or the user enter the text. So the simplest case is let's assume they enter numbers, okay, and then when they don't, that's going to break our app, okay. So then we need to write code to deal with that. But the simplest case, they'll enter two numbers, and then they'll hit that button, and how do I hide my keyboard? I think this button. Nope. Anyone Android user know how to hide the keyboard? Oh, there we go. Nope. Now let's close the app. I want to get rid of the keyboard. I typed in a text field and it brings up the keyboard, right? So I wanted to hide it. Anyway, so you have two numbers. I want to click this button, press to add, and then I want to have a label here that shows me the result, right? So I'm missing a label and I'm missing all the code to do all that, right? So let's add another label here. Just copy paste this and put it down. Okay, that's not what I really wanted. add a new label, text view. And I'll change it to the result is. I'll constrain this to the plus guy and to the add button. Okay, so I have this first text field and the second text field. So I have to somehow query what their values are from my code, right? So I need to know, like, what do I call this text field? Well, it's got an ID here, right? It's called button, and then there's another. Wait, that's the button. Here, this is called text view 4. So I could change this to something meaningful, right? Let me just go back to design view, which is which. Okay, so this one, if I go, oh, this says edit text 2 in the ID, and in the text it says text view 4. It's interesting. Okay, let's change this ID to first number. Update usages as well. This will update all XML references. I'm going to say yes. And then for 2, I'm going to call this, wait a minute. This is first number. And this one I want to call second number. And I'm going to check this box so it doesn't keep asking me. I just want to make sure that it automatically updates XML for me. So I call this first number and this is second number in the ID field. So let me go back to the text view. And has anything been updated? Yeah. So now if you look at the XML code, it shows second number and first number for those fields, right? So this is a way I can address these fields and query their value from my code, from my Kotlin code, which we're going to look at in a second. Okay, so this is activity main.xml. It's the layout file. If I look at the Kotlin file, that's mainActivity.kt, right? And here I have like nothing right now, except for the Oncreate. So I could just write a function here, function, right, fun, and I'll give the function name add numbers, and I'll take no parameters, and I'll do some stuff. Okay. So first of all, I want to get the value of one of those text fields, right? So I'll say let number 1 of type, let me call it first number, let first number, and I want this to be an integer. Oh, oops, I'm typing Swift. It's a variable, okay. And then I want another variable, second number, type int, and it's going to also equal 0. So I'm just initializing. When I give it a default value, it's just called initializing it, okay? Because I don't want, if I don't give it a value and I try to start using it, it's going to cause an exception. I shouldn't, either I should initialize it or I should give it a value before I start using it. But just to be safe, I'm giving it a value. Okay, so anyone see a potential problem already with what I'm doing?
You don't want to type it. You don't need to.
So
You just drag it up.
I'm going to do something with these two numbers, first number, second number. But what I'm pulling out of here, these are text fields. So I'm going to get strings back. And I can add strings, but that's not actually what I want to do. If I add the two strings, I'm going to like concatenate them. Right. Okay. So, but let's pretend right now and just carry on like we don't know that. Okay. So the first thing is I wanted to get the value of that first text field, right? So let's say var first text value, okay, which is a string. Is equal to, and then I want to somehow reference that text in that first field. How do I do that? Anyone have a clue?
Did you give it an ID?
Yeah, it has an ID, but what do I type?
You just type that ID. There's no-
So like, just type in first number. Okay, so let's say I don't know. So let me look at what like.
Type the ID. Then the ID,
So what do I like? What do I actually type? Like what do I type here? ID at
ID equals.
like that,
Okay, that's
like that. Okay, so let's say I don't remember. Let me look at like again. I said we can reverse engineer what other people have done, right? So let me look at. Let me save this and look at another example. Open that. So I'm basically opening a second Android Studio project. This is the homework. It's a tutorial on intents. It's on the ravenlook.com website. They just published this today. I mean, they just updated it today for Kotlin. But logically, it's the second tutorial you should do after activities. Okay. So first of all, let me just show you what this looks like so you have an idea what it is. So I'll go to Res and Layout and actually there's a bunch of stuff. But like here's an activity and there's a bunch of text fields, right? And so somehow we want to enter stuff in this text field and do stuff with it. So let's just look at what the actual app looks like when you're done. And by the way, while it's loading all that, let's take a look at the layout too to see how they did it. Or not. Let's try that again. So they use a linear layout in this. What is it? Fail a message, find invalid APK, app debug signature. This issue is all about uninstalling glitched version APK, reinstalling. Okay. Oh, I already ran this earlier, maybe. Let me kill the emulator. Let me clean the project. And try to run it again. Okay, while it's doing that, let's look at one of these text fields. So like this one that says more hair, okay? So this is a text field that the user presumably is going to enter some data into, and then the logical code side is going to do something with that. So if I look at this, its ID is top text edit text, right? And this is in activity enter text. So if I look at the source code, enter text activity, right? Enter text, right? So let me open this file. I'm going to search for top text edit. So I'll just, well, it's already there, but if I wasn't already there, I would hit like Command F, Control F on yours, and type in top underscore text, and then it would show up. Okay, so here they have val, so it's not a variable. It's top text is equal to, and then the name of the thing. Just they typed in the name dot text to string. So let's try that in our project. And actually, I was explicit here, but we could just not give it a type, and it'll know what type to give it automatically, because I'm gonna feed it a text value.
Doesn't it assume string unless you tell it otherwise?
It's not assuming string. It assumes depending on the context of what you assign to it. So if I assign a string to it, if I say this, hello, now this is going to be a string. Okay? But if I said this is equal to 1, then it's going to be an integer. Or like these, I could say, for example, this one, I could just say equals 0. I don't have to say int. If I didn't give it a value, then I have to say int. Because now it doesn't know what that is. Because if I just do this, what kind of variable is it? I don't know. We haven't used it. I haven't assigned anything to it. But if I do this, then it's got a value. Okay, so what was the name of this? It was first number, right? First, oh, look at that. There's auto completion for me. First number dot text. It's not giving me text. Why is it not coming up? Top edit text dot text to string. Let's look at what this is. This is a text view. Oh, it's not an edit text. It's a text view. Wait, that's not right.
So plain text, that's supposed to be the same as it.
Yeah, it says edit text here. Yeah, that's right. So if I go to text view, am I not looking at the right thing? Design, top edit text. Top text, edit text. So which one is top text, edit text? Oh, here it is, yeah. So its ID is top underscore text dot edit text, and it's an edit text field. And ours is also an edit text field, right? And we call it first number, and it should have a text value. So they said this equals the name of it dot text to string. So we said it equals the name of it dot text. Oh, it just didn't finish it maybe. See if that works. It's giving us an error.
Do we have like an extra import or something?
Oh. Yeah, and the secret to adding your imports is on Mac, hit Alt Enter while you're over class. Alt Enter. Okay, let me do this. Let me look at what imports they have on theirs. Because I think there was one, oh, this Kotlin X synthetic thing might be what we need to. No, it still doesn't know what it is. Let me try this again. Oh, it doesn't know what this is either now. It's interesting. Try cleaning this. Clean project. Now it seems to know what it is, because it's, yeah, I guess I had to do a clean. Oh, now there we go. It threw an error. Oh, it's throwing an error at my import statement. Activity, enter, text.
Next one is down or low?
Oh, this is, I copied the wrong, yeah, I wanted to import activity, what is it? Activity main dot star. See if that works. Well, let's find out. Okay, it doesn't know what text is now. Let's see what the options are. Okay, so it knew what first number was. Oh, no wonder. Let me get rid of this stuff, because this is like, these names are the same as what the names of my text fields are. So that's one issue. So first, text value equals first number, and then from activity here, dot text. There we go. Dot toString. Okay, so before I do toString, let's see what the options are. So there's toString. I could put it into a collection, put it into a list, associated by, blah blah blah, map, split, iterator. There's all these different options you can use, but none of them are to integer. Okay, just keep that in mind. So first text value is the first number, and then the second text value is second number dot text dot toString. Okay, before I go on, does everybody understand like what the problem was? Why it wasn't working before? And why it is now? Okay, so what happened is, like an idiot, I went and defined these variables, first number and second number.
Yeah, but then that's the same as that.
And then also my layout had first number and second number. So what it's thinking I mean is this first number. Why? Because it's defined inside of this function. And I spoke about scope a while back, but first number, if I have defined it here, this has the most immediate scope. So it's going to assume I mean this one. If I meant a different first number, then I need to, before first number, I need to type in like what the name of the class is, dot first number, so it knows which first number I'm talking, not the first number inside of this function. Okay, so I shouldn't have done this. I could have called these something else, like I could have called this like number 1 and number 2, but this is getting really confusing, this nomenclature. But if I did this and then uncomment that, I'm not going to have any errors because it's not conflicting. The name of this thing is not the same as the name of this thing. Make sense? Okay. And also, suppose I didn't have this import statement. Let's see if it still works. Let me get rid of that. Okay. And then try to run it. So now it doesn't know what this is, okay? So because first number is not defined, according to what this class knows, it doesn't know where that first number is. But when I put this import statement here, this is like a shortcut. It's using some tools from Kotlin to say, hey, I want to make available the stuff in my layout file to my Kotlin files. Okay, so if I give it an ID in my layout, I want it to be available to me here. Okay, so now if I try and build and run this, it shouldn't throw an error.
What does it mean
When
when the text isn't
it isn't purple, like this text. So the color coding, like you can actually change the colors, but like what color it is depends on whatever the rules are. So like they make orange, like keywords. See,
It's like right now I'm not first number and second number.
okay. Are you did you try building and running it? Just if it runs without errors, then you should be okay. We'll find out. Okay, so I spoke earlier about that try statement, like try catch, right? So this might be a good place to say like, hey, what if they didn't put in a number? They put in like some other garbage in that string. So if I could try to convert it to a integer and it doesn't work, then it would fail and I could deal with that. But right now I'm just going to pretend I don't know how to do that. And I'm just going to just try to start using this as integers. So first of all, let's say since I define up here number one is equal to first value. Now, if I just do this, it's going to throw an error, right? Because I'm trying to assign a string to a number. So what I could do is try to cast it. In other words, I'm going to say, hey, treat this as a number. And if it can't perform the cast, it's going to fail again. I'm going to have an error, okay? But so what I did is I said, give me this thing, this variable, as an integer, okay? And then also number 2 is set equal to second text value as an integer as well. And then I'm going to say val sum. Actually, let's say set a keyword. Val sum is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Okay, and then just for now, before I should update my UI and set that label equal to, but just to see if I can get this far, let's just print number, or the sum is how do you do this in a print statement? Okay, so let's see if I can even get this far. So I had already put some default numbers in there, right, in the layout, I think. 1 and 2. So let's build and run this and see if this doesn't crash and burn on me or what. And again, for the homework, that's all you have to do is take 2 numbers and perform some mathematical operation on them, and then update the display. Okay, so what did I forget to do? If I hit press to add, is it going to do anything? Yeah, I'm not calling that. I wrote the code, but I didn't call the function from anywhere, right? So I need to do that. So for press to add, I can, where do I add, what do I tell it what function to use? For this, I mean, but where is that in this weird UI? I have button, I have visibility, on click, right? Okay, but there's nothing appearing there. What's the name of the function? Yeah, function add numbers. Did I save this? So let me go back here. And it says instant run apply changes. If you are only changing method implementations or resources, you can make them appear faster by using apply changes button. Got it. Okay. Run app, apply changes. So that's the little lightning bolt right there. No changes to deploy. Nothing happened. On click. It's gone. Add numbers. Where's my button? There it is. Okay, on click, add numbers. So it's red here, and it says on click handler method name cannot contain the character. Oh, how about this? And it's still throwing an error. Okay, could not find this function. So you guys remember how we did this before? How does it know, like, what's the name of that function and where to find that function? Which symbol?
Is it just add numbers like that, or does it have to be like an add sign?
What? Okay, let's look again. Let's cheat a little bit. Let's look at this layout. And is there a button? This button says, like this one says save image, and this one says let's memify. And if I look at, yeah, it says none on click, right? So remember I said the other way you can do it is have a listener in your code that listens for that event to happen when it is clicked. So let's look for this button. Write text to image. So what they did here is Oncreate. They told that button in code to set this on click listener for this. Okay? And then what is that going to do? So then they have a function on click, and then they handle, if the ID is to this button, then do this. If the ID is this button, then do that. So that's another way to do it. I think last week or week before I showed you how to put the code within the layout. But let's just do it this way for now. Or I can, actually let me open another project and see what I did last time. This is the better way to do it, by the way. Because like I was saying earlier, you don't want to you don't want your logic to lay in your layout file, ideally. Let's see. Week 9. Week 6. What was it in? Android Sandbox. I can't remember what week it was that we did this, but I'll see if I can find it, then great. Otherwise, we'll write the code.
I would just start off with I just moved it over.
Okay, so here was a button, and this one on click. No, this also has nothing. Okay, so forget it. We'll figure that out for next time.
Oh, you did that last week.
Yeah, was it last week? How did I do that? This is the problem with, like, if I was an Android developer, I would be doing this every day. It would be like no-brainer. But like, I only do this stuff for you guys. Let's try one more time. You sure it was last week I did this? Oh, maybe it was, okay. I think I know where to look then. Sandbox. No, not that one. Shoot. Android Sandbox. And look at date modified. So the calculator. Get me not starter. This one. Okay. Show me my sidebar. I think I have it collapsed. Here we go. It's interesting. It remembers all the stuff that was open from the last time this was open. So we want to look at the layout. And this guy, design view. And here's a button. And on click, add task click. Okay, so let's look at what the code is inside the XML. It just says add task clicked. So how does it know? No, I think it's just it's the source here. This is activity main activity. Find, add, task. Yeah, function add task clicked. View, it takes a view. Oh, maybe the way I, let's try this. Maybe because my function is not defined properly. It doesn't have the right signature for taking a view and all that. That's why it's not working. It's not coming up. So what am I in now? I have too many projects open. Yeah, it's this one. Okay. So for my Kotlin, I'm going to just paste that function to know what the signature looks like, and then I'll get rid of it. Okay, so my add numbers should take a view, type view. Let me get rid of this function. I'll comment it out for now. Okay, so now that I gave it a view, let's see if this is now available from my layout file.
What did you change?
So before I was taking no parameters. This was empty, and I looked at the one we did last week where the function does show up on the onClick thing, and the only difference was that the signature is different, where that actually takes a view. I don't know if this is the right way or not, so we'll find out by looking now at our layout and see if it comes up now. So it's add numbers with a capital N. So let me go back here to design, and onClick, add numbers shows up. Woo! Yay! So that's all it is. Okay. So to summarize,
Back to it again. It was.
Yeah. the only reason that
full
this,
view.
the function didn't show up because my code was wrong. The signature for the function was wrong. I was missing. I have to, when I have a button that has to call a function in my layout file, that function has to have the signature where it's taking a view, because I'm passing a reference to the view, the layout.
Right.
Okay. You
Mine
may not.
read for some reason, but I did miss the add button when we were going through that.
Okay, we can take a quick break. Let me see if this works, and then I'll come look at your code. Let me stop this and run it again. And see if it doesn't crash and burn. So what I did here with the as, that's called casting. So like if you have, and what I'm doing here is very dangerous because it's not an integer, it's a string, and you could have typed anything in there. But suppose like you had, what's more common is you cast like a subtype to a type. So like if I had a class called vehicle, and then I had like a subclass of that called car, another subclass called bus, and then I was passing this thing that's a car to some function that takes a vehicle. It would work because it's still a type of vehicle. But suppose I wanted to do something specific that only cars can do and buses can't, I could say treat this as a car. But then I have to be careful that I really know that this thing is a car, right? So I could do this, again, try catch, and then it would fail, and then I would fail gracefully instead of crashing my app. What's it doing? Okay, so let's see what happens. Press to add. Look at that, I crashed it. Okay, let me not open it again. Let me put a breakpoint here. Let's do right here. And let's debug the app and see what happens. So I can see what's really going on. So I put the breakpoint like where I feel like it's not going to have crashed before this point, and then I can see what the values of things are. And suppose like, okay, I don't know how to convert a string to an integer, so I could look that up on Google too, right? So what is this doing right now? Is this doing anything? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. Let me put the breakpoint all the way at the first statement. And let's actually put another breakpoint on the Oncreate and see if we actually hit this or not. Okay, so I did hit this one for sure. Okay, so this is working. Let me go ahead and hit the play button to keep going and see. Okay, so I have one here and I have two here. Let me make sure this is one and make sure this is a two. And then I don't know how to get rid of the keyboard. Anyone know?
In the bottom right corner.
This thing?
No, down.
This thing?
Wasn't that what I did it?
No, this asked me what I want to switch to the keyboard, which keyboard I want. This thing? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to hit press to add, and it crashes. So I never even get here. Okay, so I'm not even calling this function. So let me do one thing and just change this function call. From add numbers. Just get rid of that. And see if this is what's causing the crash. If this was causing the crash, it should have it should have hit my breakpoint, but we'll find out. Okay, let me get rid of this breakpoint because I know this is not the issue. And hit play to resume. And then go here and press the add, and it does nothing. Okay, so let me try the other approach where I'm setting a listener to actually call this function. So I will just hit stop here. And again, how do I do that? So on the Oncreate, I'm going to give the name of the button and set an on-click listener and this. And then I'll have a function on click. So I can actually just copy this function. And go back to my code. My code is here. And then I'm going to change these, obviously, because I don't have these buttons. So one of my only button I have is RID dot, and then it's, oh, what is ID? I don't even know. Press to add is called button. That's kind of crappy. How about addition button? Just make sure I change it in the code. Addition button, right? Okay, so then in my Kotlin file, I'll say RID dot addition button. It comes up, and then when the ID is that, I want to call some function. So I don't have any function called this, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of this, and I want to tell it what function to call. The function I want to call is add numbers. Add numbers. But I don't have a view to pass it this time. Although there is a view here. So I could just pass it this v. And I could leave that alone for now. Okay. So again, because it's a listener for an event, so they have the same signature that there's a view involved. And then on the Oncreate, I want to set that listener. So how I do that, I give the name of my button and set onClick listener this. Is this right? No. Yeah. So the name of my button is add numbers, addition button, dot set listener, oops, is that right? Set on click listener. Dot set on click listener, and this. Okay, so all I've done is, instead of putting it in the layout file, I'm going to call it from here, and I should now hopefully hit my breakpoint. Technically, nothing has changed from how I was doing it before, and I have this red mark. Type mismatched. Required view.onClickListener and found main activity. View.onClickListener. This is in their enter text activity. So type activity, comma, view.onClickListener. Okay. Let's add this. Too many commas. See if this works, and then I'll explain what I did.
Can you scroll while that's working, or scroll down a little? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not even sure what the proper terminology is here because we're talking about Kotlin and Android. But basically what I did here, is it running? Let's see what happens. Yay! Okay, I don't know why it's different, but this works. So what I did here was, in the class, it's of type app compat activity because it's an activity, right? So this is the type. But then if I put a comma and add something else, that shouldn't be adding a type. That's like it's saying that can also do these things. So it's called an interface. So it says that this class that I'm writing, it should define methods that deal with these types of things. So like views, click listeners for views. Okay. I will look up what the terminology is in Kotlin for this, but like in like Swift, for example, in iOS development, it would be like a delegate. So a delegate is like if a class is also a delegate for some other things, then you would define what's called a protocol that says that if you implement this protocol in your class, you should define these methods. Okay, so if I want to use the listeners for onClick listeners, then I have to like put this on comma view.onClick listener after the type. So when I did that, it went ahead and let me where is it? Yeah, let me set the click listener. So this is referring to this class, and this class as just being app compat activity doesn't match what you need to pass to set onClick listener function. But if I had added this, view on click listener, I'm saying that it also is a type of class that will deal with on click listeners for views. So if I just use the function name from the layout, I didn't have to do any of that. But it also wasn't calling this method for whatever reason. I'm not sure exactly why. So I got here. Let's see what happens now. Let me just hit play and see if it crashes. Am I debugging? I hit the breakpoint. Why am I not seeing my sidebar? Oh, because I closed this. Here we go. So I will just hit play. Actually, let me step over and see what actually happens. So this is step over. Yeah, step over. So now number 1 you see is defined here as 0 because I defined it as 0. Number 2 is defined as 0. Now let me see if I get the value out of this text field. So I step over that, and first text value is equal to the string 1. It's in quotes, right? And then I step over this, and the second number is defined as a string 2. Now let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to try to cast this as a integer. So I'll step over that, and boom, something happens, right? And through an exception, and it's like, what are you trying to do? You're sending me a string and trying to make it an integer. That doesn't work. So I'm going to hit play and let it throw its exception, and this should, yeah, it crashes. So I suspect that when it's calling the function from the layout, it was doing the same thing, but for whatever reason, it's not hitting my breakpoint. I don't know why. Maybe it's something with how it's wired up. So how do I take this string and convert it to an integer? I don't know. Let's look it up. Okay, so I'm just gonna type in Kotlin convert a string to an int. How to convert a string to long in Kotlin? How can I convert an int? Blah blah blah. Okay, long is another kind of number. So let's look at what this says. Okay, and I'm gonna probably guess that it's gonna use some Java utility class. So you like have an import statement, and then you'll use some util dot something, and it'll do it for you instead of writing all this boilerplate code yourself. Okay, so what's that? Yeah, so this guy is saying he has a method that looks like this, and he wants to interpret stuff as so he's stuck, blah blah blah. So then people give answers. So string dot too long parses the string as a long number and returns the result. Okay, so string dot something is a function on strings. Okay, and I may need to do an import for that, or maybe built in. I don't know, but I can try it out and find out. So let me go back here, and instead of doing this thing, let me just say number 1 is equal to, and then I can say this one should be this dot to int. Okay. When we get this working, let's go back and try and call it from the view too and see if it still works instead of using the listener. What's that?
Number 1, number 2, so the first number, second number, and the bound. On line
21? 24? Okay, so what this is doing is I'm pulling the value of the string out of that text field in the layout. So first text value is...
So what does we call it number 1, number 2, so the first number, second number?
No. Number 1 and number 2 are these integers I've defined up here. And if I had called them number 1 and number 2, then it wouldn't know that I'm talking about the layout anymore. So if you... Yeah, I'm sorry. I mentioned this was confusing, the nomenclature I'm using now. But so this is my layout file. Okay, I just control clicked into it if you're in Windows.
So this one's called first, and this one's called second. because it won't always be number 1 and number 2. It's first number that you enter.
Yeah, and we're gonna test it. We're gonna change the number and see, and then we're gonna type in some garbage and see what happens. Okay, so let me just go ahead and run this, or debug it actually, so I can hit my breakpoint. It's doing all this stuff. Okay, so I've got 1 and 2 there. I hit press to add. I hit my breakpoint. Let's see what happens. So I've got 1 is defined, number 1 is defined as 0, number 2 is defined, and then now I've got the strings out of those 2 text fields. Now let's see if this thing works. So now number 1, you see the value has changed. Can you see this? It's kind of too small. Okay, so you see before number 1 was 0, and now when I assign it to this new value, it's changed in my console. I can see the value here. Okay, and then same thing will happen with number 2. When I step over this code. Okay, so that works. So the cast doesn't work, but this does work. And then Kotlin is throwing some exceptions, whatever. Okay, so that works. So far, I'm taking 2 numbers that are provided in those text fields, and I'm adding them up, but I'm not doing anything with that, right? I need to show it on my display. It's for my homework to be done, right? So let me go ahead and update some label on there. So if I go to my layout, but we're almost done now, right? You guys are pretty comfortable with what I've done so far? Any questions?
The casting looking back and forth is
Okay, so the casting didn't work. But yeah, so let me explain that again. So I have a string. Let me just try to close this thing. I hate Android Studio. So awkward. Anyway, okay, so to be clear again, that this first number that I've highlighted here, that's the name, that's the ID of the text field with the first number in it. And second number is the ID in the text field. So if I command click on my Mac or on Windows, if you control click on this, it'll jump into the layout file and you'll see right into the ID, what it is, okay? So if I want to get the text that's in there, I have to access the property of that thing called text. So I say first number dot text, and then you have to convert it to a string for whatever reason. Okay, in iOS you won't. It's normally a string. No. In iOS, like if you have a text field that you type into, you won't say .toString. You'll say .text, and you're done because it's a string. I don't know why they have an extra step of converting it to string. Actually, let's see what this is. Can I?
I guess my question is that really necessary? Isn't that pretty much just telling this app to store whatever information is in that field to a string?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there any way of just telling the app to store it as an integer instead of a string?
I could shortcut a lot of this. I could say all of this stuff. I could say first number dot text to string dot. Now it's a string, right? Dot to int, and I could assign it here. So I could do all of this. I could say, let me copy this. And I'm just going to comment this line out. I could do that. It's the same thing. It's just fewer lines of code, and I just don't want to confuse people. But it's the same exact thing. But it's, yeah, I'm doing all the same exact steps. Okay. Did I answer your question? I lost track. Okay. So yeah, I'm grabbing this string. I'm assigning it to some placeholder variable, and then then I'm converting it to an integer, and then I'm assigning it to this number that's an integer, and I'm adding up those two integers now that they're converted. Okay, but now instead of just printing it to my console, I need to actually do something with it. I want to update some label in my layout. So if I go to my layout, oh, by the way, what I was saying about like why is this toString, I can like command click into this or control click on Windows, and actually that function returns a string. But let me go back. I want to command click on the text to see why isn't this a string already, right? And there's a getter, which is like a method on a class that says get the value, and it's like doesn't return anything. So it's like some property. Looks like. So however they constructed that text field, you have to. It's got another layer that returns a string that's toString. I don't know why it's designed that way. It's kind of seems cumbersome to me, but whatever. That's how Android is made. Okay, so let's add a label. If we didn't already add that label, I thought we did. Yeah, the result is okay. So this label, first of all, it's not showing up, right? Yeah, it's like totally invisible. So let me get rid of all my constraints. I know I'm going to regret this, but okay. Let me reset my constraints. So I'm going to just do this manually. This is constrained to the top. This is so finicky to play with. Okay, and then it's constrained to the left. It's constrained to its right. And this plus sign is constrained to the thing above it, and to the thing to the left of it, and the thing to the right of it, and to the thing below it. And this 1 is also constrained to the left side of the container, and this 2 is also constrained to the right side of the container. I hope that worked. It didn't. And this is so slow that literally as I move, like those labels, the 1 stays outside of the container, and then a few seconds later it pops in. And then this is constrained to this, but I don't want it to jump down there. And I don't want it to be so super high, and then it's not trying to add a new constraint there. There's probably a better way to do this, but I'm just not used to this at all. But the fact that UI is updating so slowly is like that's a really bad sign as far as like Android Studio is concerned. Okay, so here's my layout. Let me just really quickly run this to or update, apply changes, see if that works. Okay, so that worked. So this is a live view in action. So I just hit this lightning bolt symbol to update instead of rebuilding and rerunning everything and waiting for this to relaunch the app. And it changed the layout. So here you see my label, the result is. Okay. Now, what's the ID on the result is? It's called text view 5, which is so undescriptive. Let's call it result label. Okay. So again, if I look at the text XML, you can see my label somewhere. Result label, right? So I'm going to use this name, this ID, to access it from code. So I want to set the text of result label in my code. After I've made my sum, I'm going to say result label, and it auto-completes it for me, dot text is equal to, and let's just say this is a test before I even add anything in there. See if this works or not. And I'm just gonna do a live view again to see if it updates it or not. Actually, that's not gonna matter because I changed the function. So let me just hit stop and great. Get rid of my breakpoint. Play because I'm not going to debug. I just want to see if this works or not. Okay, and then assuming that works, then I want to change this to actually say some text plus like what my sum is, right? So how would I do that? Let's make a string here. And I'm going to say the sum is plus, I want to say sum dot, and then sum is an integer. I want to make it a string. So I want to say to string. And I need a space after my is. And then I want to see if this is working. Press the add. Yeah, so when I press this, it does update my label. So this, you saw that, right? Okay. So now let me, instead of doing this thing, let me say my result label dot text is equal to result string. Okay.
On line 29,
Mm-hmm.
you have text to string, and on line 30, you say,
Okay, so someone was asking, above it on 28, I commented out what I originally had. Someone was asking, like, why do you have to write all these lines of code? Why not just do it all in one line? And you can. So what I did here was, instead of writing multiple lines of code to get that value out, I just set number 1, which is a integer, equal to what? First of all, I have first number, which is that label, okay, in the layout. Let me zoom in. Okay, so this is, first number is the label. I want to access the text field, the text value, dot toString. So far I have a string, right, which is whatever the person typed in there. Then toInt, which converts it to an integer. And then I can assign that integer to number 1. But for number 2, I did the same thing, but I used more steps. So I have up here, second value, second text value, which is a string, is equal to that label dot text to string, and then I set second value dot second text dot value, which is a string, to int. So I did it in 2 steps. So what I'm showing you here is that the first line and the second line are exactly the same, but it's just a shorter way of writing it. Okay, so this should just work now. Did I update it? I don't know. No. Yes? Okay, let me just see if I can do a live view. And I have 1 and 2. And if this works, I've finished the homework. And if you guys have followed, then you've also finished the homework. So let me hit press to add, and the sum is 3. Okay, let me change the numbers. Let's do 2 plus 3. What's 2 plus 3? Wow, look at that. Okay, now let's put a smiley face.
Let's blow it up.
hey, or not, yeah, hey. Okay, now let's see what happens. Press to add. Oh, gee, my app has stopped. It crashed, okay? So again, I didn't write any safe code. I didn't check to make sure I could change it to an integer. So I could do that. But if you just did this much, I mean, you satisfied the homework, okay? But if you want to write code that works, that doesn't crash when someone is going to type in something that's not a number, you should use something like what I mentioned earlier, try catch, okay?